Today I wanted to explore a little bit the fuzzy borders that exist between imagination and vision. And I think it's kind of an important topic to approach because it's so important in so much of magic and in religion as well. If the visions of St. John on the island of Patmos are only his imagination, then of course they have much less relevance than if they are vision. And that is an example that is probably well known to most people, but it goes much, much further than that. And my contention is that every person can have access to a world that extends beyond just their local imagination. And anyway, here are my thoughts. A few years ago, I was in London and I was privileged to see Rupert Sheldrake giving a lecture on the mind in general. And it was fascinating. He was talking about this experiment. Let me just move this out of the way. In which he had two labyrinths. They were identical. I know this one's not quite identical. I've done my best to try to make it look identical. But his labyrinths his mazes were in fact identical. And he had one in London. Let me just make a note here. One in London. And the other one was somewhere in Australia. I think it was, let's go with Sydney, just as a most likely candidate. And what happened is that he had a bunch of rats, and he set a rat in London off through the maze, looking for its way out to the exit. And he timed that rat, and it took a certain amount of time for it to explore the different possible avenues, and eventually it got out. And he made a note of that time, and then he set another rat, which of course picked up on the scent of the previous rat, and so on and so forth. And so little by little the rats would go faster and faster from the beginning to the end in this labyrinth in London. Once he was satisfied that all the rats that he had here knew the path very, very well, and that instead of taking maybe 2 minutes to get all the way through, they were taking the best part of 15 seconds, then he would send a message to his colleagues in Sydney. Did I write Siddy? Oh dear, sorry. There we go. Here's the N that's missing there. And he would... so the colleagues would then set the rats that they had through their labyrinth. But instead of taking the full 2 minutes that the original rats had taken over here, they started off going much, much faster. And so they would take maybe 45 seconds to get through the whole thing. He made this experiment many times, of course, with different layouts of maze, but invariably, and it didn't matter which place he started, if he had a new maze in Sydney and he would send some rats through, it would take approximately 2 minutes for them to get through. But then once all of the rats in Sydney knew the maze layout by heart and were able to go through very fast, and then he would start the same experiment on the other side of the globe, the rats starting off here would find their way out much faster than the ones who had started off the experiment did. The conclusion that he drew was that the mind of the rats who were starting off, let's say the ones in London for the very first experiment, the minds of the rats who were starting off were somehow influencing other rats non-locally around on the other side of the globe. The rats in Sydney were benefiting from the experience of the rats in London. Now, this sounds crazy, except that it absolutely feeds into Carl Jung's collective unconscious theory, that we actually do have access to the minds of not just other people in the same room as us, but of all humans throughout history, if we only dig deep enough into our unconscious mind. I've got a little statue of the Buddha here who represents the archetype of the person, the human being who has spent a lifetime exploring his own mind. Very, bicycle statue. Okay, as a little break. Okay, I wanted to move on to this little gem, which I've reviewed last week. I hope you saw the review. If you didn't, it's linked below. And I wanted to talk about an experiment that I made a couple of weeks ago when I read about this in the essay called just Magick, I think it is. I don't know if I'm going to be able to just land on it. No such luck. But anyway, in this essay, William Butler Yeats talks about an experiment that he made where there were two people in the room, or possibly more. But anyway, there were two people taking part in the experiment. One part actively imagining something, let's say, let's say a football. That was a terrible thing, because now I've got to pretend that I know how to draw a football, which I absolutely don't. Let's try and go with that. There you go. You get the idea. That's football. And he would project it onto another subject's mind. So he would imagine this football appearing in this other person's mind. And then this other person would start talking about what they thought this person was trying to send them. What he experienced was that the person receiving the information was very much giving received information that corresponded in some way to what was being sent. I think the example that he gave is that the sender was sending the symbol for air and the symbol for earth simultaneously. Right, and the person receiving was saying things. Well, I can see a pigeon flying with a twig in its beak. So we have the flying of the air and the earth of the beak. He gives some more examples which were quite striking, and I thought, do you know what? I'll try it out with my wife. So we sat down one evening on the sofa and we decided to give it a go. And after a little while, just spending a bit of time relaxing into a deep state of relaxation through meditation and just stilling our mind, I began by sending my wife an image of a crocodile. And no sooner had I done this than I realized, oh my goodness, the crocodile is quite an aggressive beast. It's kind of scary. My wife's mind is like, she's very sweet-natured and dangerous and scary things don't tend to take root in her mind. She tends to push them away and replace them with birds and butterflies. But anyway, I stuck with it, and I thought, okay, no, keep going, and just think the green scales and the big mouth with the teeth, and just moving slowly, and maybe suddenly leaping forward, just really making the image of the crocodile concrete in my own mind, and imagining it appearing on the other side of the sofa in my wife's mind, and she was saying it took about 2 minutes for her to come to the conclusion that it was a big frog with an enormous mouth. so I thought that was interesting, and then I said, okay, so send one to me, and so she started thinking about Mount Fuji, in Japan, with so we'd spent some time in Asia a few years back, so that's what she was sending to me. And so I closed my eyes and I really concentrated quite hard, and I was, okay, well, I can see a panda. No, it's not a panda. Hold on, it's a praying mantis. I say, and I heard her giggling away. She explained to me later on was that because she was thinking of these panda and praying mantis as Eastern Asian fauna. And then she thought, no, he's clearly going in the wrong direction. Just think of the massive mountain. Just think big. And I was going, oh my goodness, the praying mantis is just taking up the whole of my field of vision. It's just very overwhelming. I got very anxious about how enormous this praying mantis was getting. So there we go. Just a little illustration on how one mind can affect another, and how this impression that we have that our imagination is private and sectioned off, right, just taking place in this meat brain of ours, but actually it seems like this meat brain of ours is more like an antenna. Yes, it can produce imagination, but it seems like it can also receive information from the outside. Now, my interest at the moment is in exploring this barrier, right? Exploring exactly at what point do I stop generating these images, and at what point do I start encountering entities that are outside of myself, right? If you go back to the very, very first Esoteric Saturday video that I ever made, where I talked about an encounter with God, I'm coming to the conclusion that that is the type of entity that I encountered. Something outside of myself with emotions and responses that are not typical to me. And that's really what made the whole experience seem so real and numinous to me at the time. So those are a few of my thoughts. Just one, let me just cap this area. Where's my cap? Here he goes. One more thought is that this book, Meditation for the Love of It, is a typical not a typical, what am I talking about? It's a perfect book for teaching how to explore one's own mind. There are so many exercises in here, and it begins very simple and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. The author, Sally Kempton, has produced an amazing book. If you've seen my bookcase tour, you'll know that I think that the cover is hideous. I think that the author chosen for the foreword was a very poor choice. Nevertheless, she's very well known, and hopefully she's helped to sell a few of these books. I think that the title is terrible as well. This is a very, very strong recommendation if you are interested in exploring the regions of your mind and experimenting with the substance of what your mind actually is. Guys, those are all my thoughts for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and to subscribe down below. I wish you a very good day. See you very soon. Bye-bye.